Well, thanks everybody. Welcome to our May meeting. I think we've got some. There's someone, if you're not talking, if you could mute, I don't know what that reverb is. Okay, thanks. So this is just Lizette has put up again our milestones just to remind people where we are. You know, we've sent these out multiple times. We're making progress. We haven't actually started this interim analysis part because we're still in the data cleaning phase and the data looking at phase, but we do have a little bit of data to share with you that you'll see in a couple minutes. Next slide. So here's our site-by-site milestones update. As you can see, there's a lot more green and much less red. We are now up to 8 of the 9 sites have launched. And we've been actively working with South Carolina, who's making tons and tons of progress. And I keep hearing, hopefully it'll be, you know, relatively soon. And then San Diego just launched. When I say just launched, literally they're launching, they launched this morning. So we changed them over to green, and the red is waiting for the launch so then they could go to the next step. So we're really getting close to the last 2 sites. We're going to go through site by site. So unless someone has any general questions, I'm just going to leave this lots and lots of green up for a minute. Okay. Keep moving. So the most important thing for now that we need to talk about is some data. So, you know, you guys have done a good job of getting data to Brandon. As a reminder, the pre-implementation data is calendar years 2019 through 21. And remember, there's the 2 parts of data, the registry data and then the missed dose data. And then we pull those together and link those on our end. So we've started to look at some of the data to kind of see what the pre-data looks like. And I'm looking to see if Brandon is on. Hopefully Brandon is on. Let's see. I don't see him yet.
I see him.
I see him.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Brandon, you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, there's nothing more inspiring than the informatician who's having technical issues.
Well, you would think that after 3 years, we'd all figure out how Zoom works and how to turn our mute on and things like that. But so Brandon has now, you know, collected data from a bunch of the sites and is, you know, combing through and trying to look at it and pull the data. It's not quite as easy as you might think. Not that anybody thinks it's easy, but, you know, each data set looks a little bit different. So as a reminder, this is the conceptual model of what the VT prophylaxis administration is going to look like. You know, and you know, all the registry data is pretty straightforward. You know, as trauma surgeons, we're used to doing the registry piece, and we've all done, you know, numerous papers on that. The VT prophylaxis part is a little different, and it is a different data pool that each place is giving us. So just as a conceptual idea, the idea is all of the doses that are ordered turn into one of 3 buckets. And this is obviously a little simplified, but this is our goal. A medication is either given, it is missed, or it is refused. So, and that's for each dose. You know, say I'm ordered for, you know, enoxaparin 30 twice a day. The morning dose is one of those things, given, missed, refused. The evening dose, given, missed, refused, et cetera, for every single individual dose during my hospitalization. So we then have these percentages so that we're going to then be able to look at these, first of all, as a cohort as a whole, and then at each individual trauma center over each individual year, we'll be able to give here's the percentage of all the doses that are given. This is for dose level analysis. This is not patients. You know, you might have 1,000 patients who each get 10 doses, which makes 10,000 doses total. So on a dose level basis, what percentage are given, what percentage are missed, and what percentage are refused. So that's kind of the general concept of what it looks like. And on the next slide, Lizette, is a little bit of data. I'm going to have Brandon walk you through this. We have de-identified it by hospital and by year, but he can kind of give you an idea of how many hospitals this represents and what the data kind of means. So Brandon, you're up.
All right, so this is broken down based on data that we've already received. Now, this includes a refinement of all of the data that we were looking at instances where enoxaparin 30, 40, 50, 60, heparin 5,000, 7,500, in regimens that would be considered VT prophylaxis. So we ended up getting rid of a lot of the doses that would be considered treatment doses. And this is where we're currently looking in terms of the total number of doses, somewhere in the 10 to 30,000 per year, depending on the hospital, depending on the location, depending on the size of the data. Some sites gave a more precise data file and some gave a broader data file. And what we can see for the percent given, missed, refused, wide variation. Part of what's driving this wide variation is individual hospital practice, but also the fact that we did not exclude any documented reason for individual doses. So we categorized every documented reason as either given, missed, refused, based on our understanding, but this number could potentially be further refined. Also, in some instances, we were given only information if a dose was missed. We weren't given additional either discrete data or free text information for the reason that a dose is missed. So, for example, in the first 3 lines, these were at sites where we didn't have information about refusal. So the percentage missed when we get information about refusal will likely decrease as the percent refused increases.
And if I could just say one thing about that, Brandon, just so people understand, you know, as a reminder, we're looking for data from 9 sites. This data, this table represents data from, I believe, 5 sites only. Each line is a hospital with its data for 1 year. So the easiest thing to look at is if you look at the bottom 3 rows, they're all from the same hospital. 1 year is calendar 19, 20, one is 20, one is 21. The total number of doses, that 19,000, is shockingly static for those 3 years. Very, very similar, which you might expect, but maybe not within just a few hundred, but it is. And then you see the percentage for each of the things, which is relatively flat. Some of the hospitals have 3 years worth of data. Some have 1 year. That one in the smack dab in the middle is 1 year worth of data, and we're still working on the other 2 years from that hospital. But it just gives you a feel for what this looks like by hospital, by year. And as Brandon said, we're going to be reaching back out. There are at least 2 sites where we need to get back in touch with you because the information is not granular enough for us to figure out the missed versus refused reasons. So these 2 sites have given us information on given or not given, but not more of the broken down granular piece.
And I think the next slide is actually going to help to better describe what it is that we're talking about when trying to categorize these documented reasons. We can go to the next. So this is an example, a deduplicated list of documentation from one site. And what you can see are a variety of things that could be documented for each individual dose. Given, very clear; missed, very clear; held, canceled, entry, return to cabinet, override pool, due. We did not exclude any of these items for our analysis, but we categorized conceptually what seemed as given or missed. And at this particular site, there was an additional field of data that included a reason that the nurse could select if missed was chosen, one of which was patient and family refused. So we were able to subcategorize refused doses, missed doses, and given doses. But there is a question of, are these MAR actions, these points of documentation, appropriate to be counting even in the denominator? And that answer might potentially vary from site to site. depending on what your documentation protocols are.
So the next step, just so people understand what it's going to be, is Brandon is working on a list of all the reasons for each site why these doses are not given or missed or refused, et cetera, with some numbers of how many. So, you know, we're gonna have data on how many times this was the reason, and then we're gonna spend a little bit of time one-on-one with each site to figure out what does that mean at your site. And part of it is because, you know, we think we might know what it means, but I think we really definitely need a nurse, most likely a nurse and or pharmacist, to help us figure out kind of the Epic configuration and know what exactly that means. You know, all these words are English, but Epic doesn't translate them the same.
And if you can go to the next slide, just to give you a sense, there is wide variation between individual sites of what is documented. So these are reasons that were documented for the refined list of VT prophylaxis medications. This was not just for, this did not include any treatment doses or anything of the sort, but each site has their own unique ways of documenting, which is why we need to work with you to understand whether some of these should be excluded from the count, or if they should be categorized as missed, refused, given.
And just, you'll see that on this list are some things that don't really make a ton of clinical sense. On the last one you saw, you know, the patient was NPO. You know, obviously you're not holding a prophylactic dose of subcutaneous medication because they can't swallow the shot. Like, that doesn't really make any clinical sense. So we just have to figure out, you know, and if the numbers are very small, at some point it won't really make a difference. If there's, you know, one of those out of 20,000, we're not going to die over it. But you got to figure out what exactly that means and where do you put these other pieces. So we're still crunching the numbers, and it is a little fuzzy, I guess, for now, until we know what those numbers look like. But at least it gives you a feel for what is the data actually showing us.
Elliot, it's Rosemary. Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Yeah. What do the numbers in terms of missed and refused, is that sort of what you thought it would be? Like, is it going to be enough of a delta that you expect the study to still work? I'm just kind of curious, having, because I know you've seen the numbers for your place.
Great question. So Zach, could you go back to the slide with the numbers? And I think, so Rosemary, your answer, the simple answer is yes. So when you look at the given column, there are certainly some, like, I'll just take the hospital at the bottom.
Mhm.
They're around 90%. When we first started this work on missed doses, our very first paper about missed doses of VT prophylaxis
Mhm.
in a mixed medical and surgical population was about 12% of all doses were not given. So that's about the scale. And when we looked at it by location, by floor type, there were some floors that did very well. Our ICUs were in the low single digits, 3, 4, 5% missed doses. The surgical floors were a little bit higher. They were in either the high single digits or like the low teens. Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong dramatically. I think I'm in the ballpark. And then the medical units were actually, unfortunately, the worst.
Yeah.
There were some of the medical units that were missing 20 or 25, almost as high as 30% of doses.
Wow.
So this is about the number we were expecting for the surgical patient population, number one. So, you know, as we, you know, powered our study and looked at what it's going to look like, you know, we saw a large enough drop in the surgical population. You know, we've never done this in trauma specific. We've looked in surgical patients, which is, you know, as close as you're going to get to a trauma patient population until you study it. And the doses were around this level, you know, about 10% or a little less, a little more. And we saw about a 50% drop in missed doses with the intervention. So I do think there is, you know, there is still room for improvement. You know, we don't think we're going to get to zero, but, you know, these hospitals, like I said, the bottom hospital, that's, you know, 88, 89, 91%, call it 90% overall. You know, we do think we can get that down to about 5% not given. So we can go from 90 to 95%. The hospital at the top, those top three, that are, and there's a little more variety, you know, 80 to 83 to 88%. You know, we do think, you know, if that, say that's 85, we do think we can drop that missed dose rate by about 50%. And when you look at the numbers of doses, you know, a 50% drop when you're looking at tens and tens of thousands of doses, you know, this is all going to add up to 100,000 easily. You will have enough volume and numbers to be able to show a statistically significant difference, assuming we see a change with a similar effect size. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. Brandon, does that make sense? Does that also kind of concur with what we've shown before?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm just looking at the chat because there were a couple things in there. So I saw Laszlo said, you know, and he's in the airport, so he can't talk, but I think this idea of don't spend a ton of time until Brandon gets a little bit of data back to you, but then we will be in touch one-on-one for the trauma surgeon plus pharmacy plus nursing to help us categorize what these should fall, what bucket they should fall into. And we'll give you a little bit of guidance on how to help us do that. You won't have to go through line by line of every single dose. You will have, you know, the categories of what each dose is called. And then we'll have to figure out, is that a given? Is that a missed? Is it refused? Or, as Brandon was kind of saying, is that excluded completely? Right? So if a dose is ordered and given, we know it's given. If it's ordered and clearly documented as refused, we should put that as a refused over the denominator of all doses. There might be a sum that some of the doses that look like they're ordered, but should need to come out of the denominator. And we'll kind of work with each site to make that happen. And then there was something from Brian, I'm just reading here right now. Yeah, so each site, you know, as you get us the data, these different pieces, each site does it a little bit differently. So other comments or questions? It's nice to see, you know, that in the very beginning, it's nice to see the places turning green, you know, the places that are up and running this. The other thing that's nice to see for me is to see some preliminary data. It kind of makes sense. We're on the right orders of magnitude of the numbers of doses per patient. You know, if you've got 2,000 admissions and everyone gets, you know, an average length of stay of 5 days and 2 doses, like we're in the ballpark for getting the right number of doses prescribed. And as Rosemary asked, the missed dose rate is about kind of what in the ballpark of what we expected. So it's nice to see that's actually playing out. More questions or comments about the data and what it looks like?
And just to be clear, anything that was not clearly given or refused was lumped into the missed category. So as we refine these reasons, the missed percentage might decrease, and it's also possible the refused, because of reducing the denominator, will increase from what we saw in the initial shot of data.
Yeah, so this is like we said, just a very, very first rough stab at the data. I don't think it will change. I mean, it might change, you know, a percent up and down or things like that, but I don't think it will change. I think it's directionally appropriate. Okay. Let's plow ahead. Nurse education. So we're doing great on the sites. Just as a reminder, especially if you have new nurses that are coming on, being onboarded, new people working on different floors, they can still be assigned the education. The nurse managers still can use this, still can give it out to them. They can use the same code. They can still take the education. All the sites are in the 80s. Maryland made a big push, and they got a little closer. So if there's a way to get a last few at Maryland, that'd be great. We're still not closing it. It'd be great to get a few more from that site, but I don't think the other sites need to push quite as hard. But like I said, it is helpful if there's new nurses, you know, especially this project, it's been going on for well over a year or two, and they've been doing this education for over a year. Feel free to have those new nurses do it. As a reminder, just about that nurse project, the survey was done, and we're looking at some nursing survey data, and we'll be sharing that information in a little while. The next part that Lizette is showing us is now the qualitative interviews. Just as a reminder, we're targeting these 5 sites, and the group from Penn is doing these qualitative interviews and these structured interviews to kind of get feedback on what works and what doesn't work at these different sites. I've been in touch with Dr. Kronholm from Penn, who's running this this project. And Danny is the research assistant who's doing these interviews, has been in touch and has been doing some of these. I don't have an exact number yet, but I know that they are actively underway. They have the contact for all the different people at each different role at each different site, and they're actually doing this piece. And then, these get recorded, and qualitative data analysis is done on those interviews. Questions or comments about the qualitative interview part? Okay. Next up is the cost analysis. So as a reminder, this is a supplemental funding that PCORI has invited us to apply for. We sent in an application. We have comments back from them that we're in the process of re-editing. This will not start until all the sites have launched. I know there were comments before, and we sent this out, and I definitely got some comments via email. Some very astute person asked me, well, you've excluded this idea of cost effectiveness. We talk about the cost, and we have all these ways to measure the cost, but there wasn't anything on the other side to show the cost effectiveness. And that was very deliberate. The person who's running this for us is a PhD health economics professor at the Bloomberg School of Public Health here at Hopkins, and is an expert in cost effectiveness. He absolutely knows how to do that. Just to be clear, PCORI will not fund cost effectiveness. So we cannot put that we're going to do any cost effectiveness work with their money. What we can do with the PCORI money is do the cost analysis part and figure out the costs that we have spent either centrally at Hopkins, centrally at Center, or locally at each site to implement this project. And that is the part that PCORI is willing to pay for. Then we can still do the cost effectiveness work, which we think is important. And we will do that, quote unquote, on our own time, not paid for by PCORI, but we will still do that part of the work. So when you looked at the thing and it doesn't talk about cost effectiveness, that was very deliberate. And that was, because we're following their rules of exactly what we need to do. And this would be, I think people have looked at it or heard about it a little bit. Some of it is some structured interviews regarding cost with each different person at each different site, and also having them supply some data and some numbers. And then Joe Levy will help us crunch all this into here's how much it would cost at a site to start this up. And the range might be from X to Y. Here's our point estimate, et cetera. So that is a draft went to PCORI. They gave us some comments back. We're in the midst of revising that. Lizette or Michelle, anything you want to add to that discussion?
No, I think you summed it up well. Okay.
So assuming that gets funded at some point, we will be in touch with the different sites to set up some time and some a little bit of some extra data asks. Okay. Reminder that on that last slide, if you need any of the data and any of the metrics, any of the documents, anything at all, they're almost all in this project page. There's the password Lizette has put in there again. The recordings are all there. If anyone new to the team wants the information, you can always ask Lizette and she can give you access to all of this information. It's all open to the whole entire group. So before we get into the site-by-site milestones, any general questions from anybody on the call? Okay, let's keep plowing ahead. So this is the site-by-site part. Hopefully there's someone from each of the sites. I don't think there's a lot of stuff, but if there's anything new or questions or anything like that you want to talk to us about, now's your chance. Christiana. I don't see John or Annie Warner. Okay. University of Maryland, I did see Rosemary. I heard you.
Yeah, Paul couldn't make the meeting, but he said he was gonna get he was supposed to send in the name of some nurses to Lizette, and he promised to do that. I've talked to Danny, and I know Paul and he have connected, and I think Danny had to cancel their rescheduling.
Perfect. I'm glad to hear that you talked to him. Wasn't hopefully not too difficult. You don't have to tell us what you told him, but
No, he's very nice. It didn't take long or anything like that. It was fine. Thank you.
perfect. And I think, and just as a reminder, he's going to get information. We want information from different people at different in different roles at each site. So we definitely want like the trauma surgeon PI, but we also absolutely need the data people, the tech people, the IT people, the nurses, et cetera. So it's a relatively short interview with each person, and hopefully we'll get some good data out of it of, how could we make this happen more easily the next time? Thanks for talking to him. Oregon, I know, Laszlo, you're on, you said you couldn't talk, but you could type. Any concerns or any issues or any questions you need for us? I'm looking in the chat. Okay, we'll count that as a no. Stanford, I definitely saw at least a couple people. I didn't see Shelley, but I did see Doctors Spain and who else did I see? Oh, Knowlton.
Hi, Elliot. We just have a couple updates. So Shelley wanted me to pass along that we went live. It'll be we went live September 7th with our Volt alerts. So we'll have a year's worth of data this September, assuming that we're still targeting that 1 year, right? That you want the data for? Okay, perfect.
Yep. So we're going to be collecting, and it's a good reminder for everybody that we are going to be asking for new data. The last piece of data we asked for is 2021. We did talk about everybody needs a little bit of time to finalize their 2022 registry, which hopefully is done by now. But we're going to fix the data with each site, this back and forth of what are we getting, how are we categorizing it, et cetera, before we ask for the next round of data. But our next ask is going to be for the 2022 calendar year. And, so Lisa, for example, you would have, when you give us the 2022 data and we know your start date, we'll have some more pre-data and some post-implementation data. And then later on, obviously, we'll be asking for the 2023 calendar year data where we can get a little further along. But at least for now, we're not asking for new data yet until we make sure all the data is just right the way we get it.
Okay, perfect. So that was the other thing that Shelley had generated an Epic report so she could essentially pull all the heparin and Lovenox data from our traumas, and we can get you the 2022 when you're ready. You should have our baseline already.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Next up. Anybody from Lancaster? I
Hey,
see
it's
Joanne.
Yeah, it's Joanne. Everything is status quo. I do owe Brandon some passwords. Apparently some of our data is password protected. I will be sending him that this week.
Perfect. I think you may have been one of the sites that had 1 year, because I guess he had access to 1 year, but not all of it. So that's where we're just working on site by site. And if Brandon needs more help from each individual site, he'll be reaching out to you one-on-one.
Yeah.
But perfect. Thank you for that. Okay. Sounds good. Wisconsin.
Hi, no updates here. Everything's going smoothly.
Great. Utah.
So we did go live with the real-time alert. We're working with informatics right now about getting a report so we can kind of follow up and make sure that's happening. And so we're hoping to meet later this week to just kind of confirm and double check everything from an Epic point of view.
Perfect. And as you do that, we would love to just hear from you. And I don't mean just you individually, but I mean like each site, if there's anything that you're still doing, you're still working on, you're still getting extra data or anything like that, just shoot us a quick email. Even if you just send it to Lizette, she can get it out to the rest of us. But just to know kind of things are going smoothly as expected. Perfect. Thank you. San Diego. So today's launch day. I think I saw Brian on. I don't know. Was Todd on also?
Yep,
Yeah, I'm
I'm
here.
on as well.
Oh, hey.
Elliot, thanks. Yeah, we went live today and just want to thank Dr. Clay, who's our inpatient CMO and informatics and Epic guru and his team for really tireless efforts to work through the issues and get this done, because they put in a ton of work to get it to work. And so I'm very appreciative to Dr. Clay and his team.
I want to thank Brandon for providing the blueprints that got us like 98% of the way home, but we hadn't built a BPA at UCSD that outbounded a page in quite some time, and these are notoriously tricky. I think it took us 3 weeks of iterative testing to make sure we had it right. So we did turn it on at about 11 a.m. this morning. We'll be checking in every couple of days with our BPA slicer dicer data model, which allows us to track live BPAs very easily to see if and when it's firing and how often. And the earlier discussion on the data construct was really helpful, because I think we can rapidly catch up with the historical data. One of the reasons it took us a while to get the BPA just right is that apparently some historical decisions were made about our MAR action category list that introduced a little bit of weirdness. But we have a much better understanding of that now. And so one of the things I'll do, Elliot, is I'll send Brandon this week. Here's our proposed inclusion exclusion criteria based on our own category list for what is given, missed, and refused. Because we've just done a ton of discovery over the last month on that particular point. And so we should be able to submit a well-configured data request with this updated information to our pharmacy reporting folks and turn it around super quick.
That sounds great. I appreciate it. And you know, as someone who's clearly dived into the data like we've been doing over the past couple of years, it is not as clean as you might think it's going to be.
No, we just want it to be as undirty as possible.
Exactly. And I think some of these things are not intuitive. And that's where, like I said, it's helpful to have, you know, an informatics person plus pharmacy and or nursing, because they're the ones who are actually in the chart doing these things, to figure out exactly what that means to people. So thanks for doing it. I'm excited that you guys launched, and I'm glad we were able to, you know, provide something, and that, you know, the data framework and the build framework to make it happen. So excited to see it actually going live. Okay. Next, South Carolina.
Hey guys, the caboose. So nurse education done, trauma registry data should be all be submitted to you guys. Real-time alert is built and it's actually firing. I'm getting probably 4 BPAs that fire off every 12 hours roughly over the last couple of days. I've ordered the beepers. I just need the beeper number assigned. So we should be able to go live within about a week, I'm hoping, as long as I get it back. I've got my educational materials. The one thing I need is the posters. Maybe Lizette
We can have Lizette. We can
Yes.
absolutely have Lizette help you with that.
Yeah, I sent that email over to you last week. I can resend it just so it's at the top of your box.
Oh, I don't think I saw that. Okay, I'll double check. Thanks.
Yeah, because I had your logo, so you were good to go.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, maybe it hit my junk mail or something. I don't know.
Okay, I'll resend right now.
Okay, cool. And we should be ready to rock shortly, Elliot. It's a matter of days now.
I appreciate it, Bruce. And just as a reminder and full disclosure, I was the last site of the 17 in CLOTT 1 to have my IRB approved. Not because I put it in late. It was just, it took a really, really, really long time. So it took me a little while to get started, and then we caught up and we did just great. So yeah. I just want to thank you for doing it. And some sites had it a little easier than others, but thanks for pushing through till the bitter end.
Yeah, we're there.
I know it. I love it. So, okay. Excellent. And I think that's it. Open up for general questions, comments, issues, anything anybody else wants to bring up or talk about. I think we're doing great. I think that, as you can see, there's a lot of green. There's even these last couple pieces look like they're going to be turning green very shortly. We're making progress on some of these other parts of it, the data part, the mixed methods and the surveys and all these other, and the qualitative interviews. Like, it's actually coming together. And then once the thing is built and up and running, as a few of you said, yeah, we're on target, we're moving, it's just happening. So I don't think I have much else to ask or offer. Anything else from the center people? Michelle, Lizette, anything else you want to talk about or add or say?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's Michelle. I'm on my iPhone. I don't know if you can tell, but I just wanted to say congratulations and sincere thanks to everybody for getting launched or nearly launched, and it's so exciting to, like you said, Elliot, to be looking at data. So it's been a long sustained effort by everybody, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely true. Like, I think you all did a lot of work up until now. Now there's a little bit of a lull phase until there are these spikes of give us some data or do these other pieces. And then there'll be more work on our end for data analysis, writing, and then the whole group. There's going to be, obviously a ton of papers coming out of this whole big project. So thanks a lot.
And just real quick, I know on our last call, we talked about the data use agreements. We did confirm with Hopkins that everybody's data use agreement is fine as is, and it's current, except Christiana. So we're working with them, but everybody else is clear.
Perfect. Thanks for the reminder, Lizette. Anything else, Lizette, on your end? Thanks, Lizette and Michelle, for, obviously all the work you do at Center.
Yeah, no, if there's anything, never hesitate to call me.
Anything else from the Hopkins people? I know Brandon had a chance. Peggy, Doreen, anything else? I see Doreen on. I think most of the sites have had Doreen visit either in person or virtually. If anybody needs a top off, if they want Doreen to come back and meet with people again, if you think that might be helpful, she's I'll say she's always available except for a short vacation coming up. Well-deserved vacation, but besides that, she's always available to come either in person, across town if it's close, or virtually. So just you always have Doreen's contact, or Lizette or I can help you get in touch with her. Anything from you guys? Okay. Anything from any of the sites we didn't talk about? Anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay, feel free if there's emails. I know there's often an email or two that people would rather do one-on-one. Feel free to send it to, me and or Lizette and or Brandon, depending what type of question it is. We always usually get some emails after the meeting. But thank you, everybody. This thing is actually going pretty well. So with that, I think we're going to close out.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.